Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to all who have already spoken and those of you who will speak following me. And I want to thank Senator Kuzner for being a study for many of us in leadership. That is, I'm not laughing. Now, don't make me laugh. In leadership with integrity, tenacity, and endless good humor. So thank you for that. You have done this with grace in a situation where there are huge challenges. I also want to thank Senator Clement for bringing this amendment forward. I plan to vote in favor of it. And I think, as has already been indicated, if you have any questions, please do go back and read or reread the findings and recommendations of the Legal Committee after studying this, albeit only for one day, but for 6 hours, and see whether indeed you agree. I think it's also indeed fitting that this amendment is being proposed by Senator Clement, who has experience as a candidate, as she mentioned when she spoke to this, both locally and nationally, who knows the challenges of running a campaign, and whose passion for the democratic process and ensuring that process works for all Canadians we see each day in this chamber. Part 4 of Bill C-4 would give federal parties legal cover to make their own rules about what they can do with Canadians' personal information, including without Canadians' consent and without their knowledge. It would also, as you've already heard, allow parties to protect themselves retroactively with respect to their uses of personal information dating back to May 31st, 2000. At the Legal Committee, we heard clearly that Canadians' privacy and data rights must not be ceded in this way. Matthew Hatfield, the Executive Director of Open Media, told us that the tech companies who work with political parties, I quote, talk about their capacity to geo-target people so tightly they reach only a handful of people in certain physical offices. They boast about being able to identify not just that someone is likely to vote and who they'll probably vote for, but to determine whether that person went to a polling booth on election day and voted, and that's just the start, end quote. Sarah Bannerman, professor and as you've heard, and Canadian Research Chair of Communication Policy and Governance, spoke about a survey she carried out with Canadians. And I quote, "We found that respondents were not aware of the range of data that the parties collect, particularly political views, ethnicity, income, religion, and online activities and IDs. It's difficult to know what parties are doing with data, what tech companies are holding on to that data, and in turn, what the tech companies are doing with that data," end quote. Jim Basili of the Centre for Digital Rights emphasized that, quote, "The absence of governance for the contemporary surveillance economy has allowed personal data generated by our experiences, choices, and even our thoughts to be captured, processed, and traded as an economic input for profit and power," end quote. Michael Harvey, Information and Privacy Commissioner for British Columbia, put it plainly, and I quote, "Our personal information can be used to make decisions about us and influence our behavior," end quote. Imagine for a moment the information that someone door knocking for a political party can glean about you without asking even a single question. Can they estimate the amount that you pay for rent, the value of your home? Are there kids' toys outside, artwork on the door? Do you have a pride flag in your window, a cancer awareness sticker on your car? Now imagine that campaigner can see your phone. Colleagues, the question we will vote on today belongs to and should be asked of all Canadians, and that is, what personal information do political parties get to have about us? What personal details can be gathered and surveilled by the groups who talk to us and aim to persuade us to elect their leaders to positions of power? Right now, we do not know. If Bill C-4 passes in its current form, we may never know. Senator Clement's amendment is about upholding people's rights and choices. It is also about upholding Canada's democracy and sovereignty at a time when both face unprecedented challenges. As Jason Wawoda of the BC Freedom of Information and Privacy Association testified to the Legal Committee, and I quote, "Foreign interference does not require hackers overseas. It often relies on lawfully obtained domestic personal information accessed through intermediary domestic actors that can include Canadian political parties. In such cases, the data may be lawfully collected and election law may not be formally breached. Yet the cumulative effect can still be the distortion of democratic choice, decision-making, and the erosion of electoral sovereignty. That is why privacy and fair information safeguards are also national security safeguards. By weakening those safeguards without replacing them, Bill C-4 lowers the barrier for foreign interference," end quote. Colleagues, all of us know well our role as senators and the limitations that come with this role. Federal parties have characterized this as an issue relating to elected parliamentarians and insist we should defer to them, our elected colleagues, in the other place. Canadians elect their members of Parliament as their representatives. The decisions made here on Parliament Hill affect all aspects of Canadians' lives. If Canadians don't agree with the decision made by their representative, a crucial right and recourse is to vote for someone else next time. What happens, though, to that choice when federal parties appear to be in lockstep? When these sweeping powers for federal parties regarding the use of Canadians' personal information may influence and undermine that right to vote? When these measures move through the other place with no study, slipped in omnibus style in the final pages of a bill entitled the Making Life More Affordable for Canadians Act. How on earth does this make life more affordable? I raised at second reading my concerns about the approach to the affordability in Bill C-4. The bill's tax cut will mean that billions of dollars of Canadians' money is spent each year providing very small benefits, $35 per month, to those with higher incomes. It will provide nothing to those most in need, nothing, it seems, except for the specter of their personal information being exploited without their consent. The question was put to me and our colleagues at the Legal Committee in these stark terms about this bill, but also about the Senate and Canada's federal parliamentary system. Quote, "Is this about serving narrow, specific political actors, or is this about serving Canada and Canadians? In my humble opinion, honourable colleagues, our duty is clear. Miigwech, merci, thank you."